All right, good morning, all. Hello from Fossil Creek Nursery. My name is Dan Hartwig, Colorado Certified Nursery Professional. Thanks for joining us today for our ongoing series of how-to talks. Today we're going to be talking about lawn maintenance. Um, I'm briefly going to go over lawn installation and the choices for that, but most of this is going to be focused on maintaining, caring for, and troubleshooting your established lawns. Uh, you're going to hear me using the term turf grass more than lawn. Lawn is a super generic term in our industry. Lawn could be a ground cover. Lawn could be any number of things. Specifically, we're going to be talking about grass lawns. You'll hear me use the term turf grass because our industry uses the term turf grass to differentiate between what we talk about as lawn compared to ornamental grasses. So, first of all, speaking of turf grass, I'd like to wish everybody a happy opening day for baseball. It's the best use of turf grass, in my opinion. Today is not a federal holiday, but in my opinion, it should be. All right, let's talk briefly about the key to a good lawn is planning. The more planning you do, that's what the off season is for when we can't be out there, caring for our landscape, the better results you're going to have with your lawn. Briefly, for talking about installing our own lawn, of course, we have two choices, but a lot of the steps in those two choices between seeding our lawn and between using a sod lawn are going to be very similar. The more time, the more energy, and unfortunately, the more money you spend on preparation for this whole process, you're going to get significantly better results and probably have it take the first time. So before I would install a turf grass lawn, whether it be seed or sod here in northern Colorado, the first thing I would do is I would collect a soil sample and send it off to CSU Extension. We are really lucky here in Larimer County that our county extension is Colorado State University. The basic panel costs $35. It is money really, really well spent. The way to collect a sample is to take your trowel, take samples from various locations from where you're planning on installing your turf grass, mix them up in a 5-gallon bucket, let it dry out, mix them together real good, send it off. The great thing is you can write along with that sample what you're planning to do with this sample and say, I want to grow a Kentucky bluegrass lawn. I want to grow a tall fescue lawn. I want to grow a native buffalo grass or a blue grama grass lawn. And they will respond to you not only with information about your soil texture, your soil chemistry, your soil acidity or lack thereof, which is, of course, what we will most likely be dealing with. But also, if you tell them what you're growing, they will recommend an amendment plan, which is going to take a lot of the guesswork. Throwing expensive chemicals at landscape problems is really the least effective use of your resources for caring for your lawn. I mean, of course, we're in the industry of selling you landscaping products, but I want to sell you the right stuff in the right amount. There is no greater waste of money than basically pouring unneeded chemicals onto your turf grass or having them sit in the shed. So once we've got that soil test back, most important thing is we have to deal with our soil conditions. As you know, the most difficult thing about growing anything in northern Colorado is not our weather, it's our soil. Our soil tends to be compacted, clay, and very, very alkaline. Very few plants appreciate being put in that. Almost everything I could sell you here at Fossil Creek, it wants to live in well-drained, loamy, acidic soil. Now, there's nothing we can do about the loam part. Loam is, the ideal combination of sand, silt, clay, and organic material. But what we can do is add organic material to our lawn, all to our soil that we're going to plant lawn in, especially in the form of compost. Remember, never put any uncomposted plant material into the soil. The problem with that, of course, is that once you get it under that soil and tilled into that soil, it will start composting. It will get devoured first by fungus, then by bacteria, then by worms and nematodes. And that process is great if it's going on your compost heap. It's the last thing you want going on under the ground, though, because that process will fix every bit of nitrogen, the number one nutrient that turf grass needs. So consider having soil brought in. For small amounts, of course, I can sell you a bagged product, but if you get on the phone with me or come see me in person, I can recommend a really, really competent supplier for bulk topsoil. I can also help you out with the calculations for that. Calculations and planning are super important. You are always going to need more than you expect. It's just part of our business. I would consider adding compost to that soil. Salt, since we're only going to be adding compost usually to this once, you can top dress your lawn, but adding compost in the planting stages is what's really going to help. You can use a compost with manure in it, which is of course less expensive than an all vegetable compost that I would recommend you use for planting a tree or a shrub. Now, most common turf grass type in Colorado, of course, is Kentucky Bluegrass. The Kentucky Bluegrass strains we're selling today are vastly superior to what our industry was doing 10, 20, 30 years ago. They are much more drought tolerant. Other choices, of course, are a tall fescue, which is going to look good, but it's going to need almost the same amount of water as Kentucky Bluegrass to look good. Go with Kentucky Bluegrass. Of course, if you wanted to install a native lawn, first things check, of course, make sure you're allowed to do that where you live. But that's something, if you come see me in person or get on the phone with me, we can go over the process of doing that. I sell seed for all of these applications. Fossil Creek Nursery does not carry sod, but I can recommend you a good supplier. Now, how to sod or seed a new lawn is really, really similar. Most of the preparation is going to be the same. Like I said, most important thing, let's add some soil. Let's add some compost. 6 inches is good, 10 is better. We're going to want to till that in, we're going to want to level it, and we're going to want to roll it. We want it compact but not concrete. This is since we have the that soil available to add product in, it would be a really good idea then to go ahead and till in superphosphate, a 0.460. That middle number, of course, phosphorus, is going to develop root growth. All right. When to seed a lawn? Answer to that is late summer. It's counterintuitive, but that's when we're going to have the most sun. That's when those new grass plants are going to germinate the quickest. When to sod a lawn? Early spring. All right. Like I said, I'm going to keep my talk about installing a seeded or sodded lawn pretty brief. I'd love it. I'd love to get on the phone or see you in person if you want to talk about that more. What I'm going to be talking about more is caring for an established lawn. So of course we can't talk about turf grass management without talking about water. I get the question over and over: how do I program my system? How often to water? How much water do I use? The thing is, I can't answer any of those questions because every lawn, every bit of turf grass lives in its own microclimate. We have different exposure, different wind, different shade, different soil. Established lawns take significantly less water than new lawns that are in the process of being established. Now, the most important tool for figuring out how much water your lawn needs is a tool that has no other use. It's that absolutely enormous screwdriver that everyone has in their toolbox that is way too big to drive any screw that has been manufactured in the last 100 years. We want to work, all growing, all horticulture it's about a third decorating. It's about a third science experiment. It's about a third mental health. This is the science experiment part. What we want to do is we want to figure out how much water it's going to take to soak down at least 6 inches into that root. Most homeowners in a residential setting, they give their lawn not enough water, but too often. They use really, really frequent but shallow waterings, and that just does not get down to where those roots are. By giving our turf grass, and the rest, almost all of our plants appreciate this, by giving them deep but less frequent waterings, we're going to encourage deep root development. There is very few places in the natural world where it's going to rain exactly 15 minutes every day. It just doesn't work that way. We need to figure out how much water to put on to get that water to soak down 6 inches. The best tools for that, of course, that big old screwdriver and sticking your fingers in the soil. No numbers are perfect. Use the probe. All right, best time of day to water, before 9 a.m. Of course, there's a lot of myths and bad information about what we do in our industry, about how to care for plants, including turf grass. Watering at night does not cause plant diseases. We're going to talk about what does cause plant diseases later on, but watering at night is not one of them. We do not have a dry, a moist enough environment where we really need to worry about fungus problems because watering at night is the way to go. Repeat your zones. If you have a computerized programmable system, repeat your zones the same morning or the same night. 15 minutes on zone 1, 15 minutes on zone 2, 15 minutes on zone 3, then go back to zone 1. Gives that water some time to soak through our heavy, dense clay soil to get to where the roots are. Remember, we're watering the roots, not the plants. Grass is one of the simplest plants. It's a relative newcomer. Grasses have only been around for about 60 million years, and it's an amazing feat of evolution. It's the simplest plant you can have. It's leaf and roots. That leaf does not care if it's wet. The roots care. All right, I'm going to move on and talk about mowing. Now, some people love to mow. It's my absolute least favorite task. But if we're going to maintain our turf, we need to do it correctly. And the most important thing is to maintain your lawnmower. Take off the blade, sharpen it every single season. You can hire it done. If your blade is really, really rough, I would go to the box store and buy a replacement. It costs between $20 and $30. If you don't have a bench grinder, this is your excuse to buy that tool. I use mine, well, exactly once a year, and for this purpose. It's a satisfying job sharpening that blade. Use eye protection. That's going to create a clean cut in the grass. It's going to cause that grass less stress when it's mowed, and it's going to reduce our insect and disease problems by using a sharp mower. Now, pretty much all good lawnmowers will have an adjustable height of the deck. On the one I drive, it's a well-built machine by Honda. It's a machine I recommend a lot. For about $400, it should last like 10 seasons. You adjust the deck height by adjusting the wheels, of course. Now, a lot of people scalp their turf grass. They cut it way too low. In my opinion, and there is good science evidence-based trials on this, you want to give your turf grass a buzz cut just once a year. Lower that deck to an inch or an inch and a half. This should be the first time you use it, that mower every year. What that's going to do is it's going to get the detritus, the dead plant material, out of your turf grass. That is going to help with insect and disease control and just give you a healthier lawn. That is the only time of year I would bag my clippings. Bag those clippings, put them in your compost heap. Remember, don't till them into your vegetable garden because we do not want uncomposted plant material in any of our plantings. All right, only time we're going to bag it. Another myth about turf grass care is that leaving our clippings on the lawn causes thatch and it causes diseases. It does not. Actually, by leaving your clippings on the lawn, you're going to reduce the amount of nitrogen. Basically the number one thing we use fertilizer for on our turf grass, by between 1/4 and 1/2. Fertilizer, especially the good stuff, is not getting any less expensive. You don't want to use any more of it than you absolutely have to. Please leave, except for that first buzz cut of the year, leave your grass clippings on the grass. It will not cause thatch. It will return that nitrogen to the soil. And unlike chemical fertilizer, it's actually adding organic material back into our soil. All right. Once you've given it that initial buzz cut, raise the deck to 3 to 3.5 inches. We never want to mow. We want to mow frequently enough that we're never cutting off about more than 1/3 of the length of the turf grass. Okay, you heard me talk about thatch. What thatch is that built up cluster of decaying plant material down at the base of our turf grass. It's brown, it's ugly, it's dense, and it causes a number of problems, especially with insects and diseases. Thatch is generally caused by bad management practices. It's not caused by grass clippings, and here's what it's a big cause of thatch is over-fertilizing. So 2 ways to get rid of thatch. First of all is these can be done by renting the machine at the box store, or hiring a professional to do it. But power raking should be done every few seasons. Spring is the time to power rake. It's a destructive looking process, but it's going to remove thatch, remove detritus, remove dead plant material, and give that those turf grass plants. I mean, remember, turf grass is a ton of little plants. It's going to give them the air, the sunlight they need to grow and thrive. Now, core aeration is super important here in northern Colorado. I'd recommend getting that done every single year. Rent the machine, hire it done. Fall is the best time to core aerate. Leave those cores, even though they're ugly, on the turf grass. They will, don't rake them up. They will decompose, break down, return those nutrients to the soil. All right, let's talk about fertilizer. Over-fertilizing is a big cause of turf grass problems. Like I said, it contributes to thatch. It also, over-fertilizing, especially using too much nitrogen, is going to cause a situation where that plant has huge foliar growth, leaves, the grass, what you see, and really be lacking in root development. It will have insufficient roots to be pulling nutrients and keep those plants healthy. All right, so this is evidence-based science again. I always encourage people to avoid garden hacks. Garden hacks are things like, grandmother used to tell me. A lot of them involve things like dish soap, Coca-Cola, tobacco juice, or to avoid any advice ever given by an author named Jerry Brown. Jerry Brown is the best-selling author in the history of gardening. Almost everything he says is wrong. None of it has ever stood up to clinical trials. A lot of it is just bad advice. In general, when you look up anything having to do with our industry, if you're gonna search for that on Google, always add the word extension to your search. That will give you a academic source, preferably a state university, and we are really lucky here to have Colorado State University as that resource. Check on evidence-based science. Don't believe myths. Don't believe garden hacks. Don't believe shortcuts. The way to have a good landscape is good planning, knowledge, hard work. There are really no shortcuts. This is the and this advice is straight from CSU Extension's lawn care fact sheet, they are recommending 4 fertilizations a year, most of it which will be done at half the recommended rate on that bag. Remember, if you are leaving those grass clippings on the lawn, you're cutting back the number of nitrogen, the amount of nitrogen you use by half. For example, for Kentucky Bluegrass, they're recommending a mid-March application of 1/2 the recommended rate, a May application of the recommended rate, a September application of 1/2 the recommended rate, and an October application of 1/2 the recommended rate. Now, of course, you have 2 choices for a lawn care fertilizer. You can use a synthetic product. The main ingredient in there will be ammonium nitrate. A lot of these are way too high in nitrogen. Remember, the 3 numbers you're looking at are nitrogen is going to encourage foliar growth, phosphorus is going to encourage root development, and potassium is going to be for the reproductive and health functions of that plant. We want a balanced application of those 3. Too much nitrogen basically means you're going to mow a lot. I understand some people really like that. You maintain a landscape and a garden to make you happy. If you like to mow a lot, I can't discourage you from that. Now, the advantages of a petrochemical product, of course, is lower cost, and it goes a longer way. Always read the instructions. We sell our best-selling fertilizer here. A lot of growers just swear by it. It's called Jordan's Green Master. A 40-pound bag does 10,000 square feet. Get out there, pace off your lawn, use the right amount. Less is more when it comes to fertilizer. Basically, if you put down more than the recommended amount, you're going to have 2 things. You're going to have expensive soil, and you're going to mow a lot. The other, of course, path is to use a organic fertilizer. We sell a product this is what I use at my place, called Alpha 2 plus iron. We'll talk about iron in a minute. Or we also have the Alpha 1 that does not have additional iron. It is more expensive. A 40-pound bag only carries 5,000 square feet, but the good thing about that is it's a renewable resource. All this is shredded up alfalfa plus bone and blood meal. It's basically the leftovers of the process of turning hogs into things that are delicious to eat. Good thing about using an organic product, though, it actually is adding organic material back into your soil, unlike a petrochemical product. Iron. So I'm a firm believer in all plant health care. Do not treat any plant preventatively for any disease, any nutrient shortage. Wait until you see signs or symptoms. As a rule, there's a lot of iron in our soil. The problem is our soil is so alkaline that a lot of the times that iron is chemically unavailable to that plant. A lot of the times there will be all the iron you need in your soil, but that plant won't be taking it out because your soil's pH is too high. That's, again, the wisdom of using a soil test is, we're going to see if all I'm doing is making my soil more expensive, or if I'm actually using the right product. If we do decide, if we do see signs of iron chlorosis, it's basically we're going to see a yellowing of the tips of our leaves of our grass plants. It's going to tend to be all over. The best way to do that is to add iron sulfate in a liquid form through a hose-end sprayer. Come see me, give me a call. We'll get you the right product, and you're going to hear me talk about this a lot. This is one of the more important tools you can have in your garden shed or garage. This is a hose-end sprayer. We sell this Chameleon brand for $23. I'll bet this guy will last 10 years. Has a quick change adapter with a filter, different spray settings, different settings. Whenever I sell you a chemical, state law says I have to politely ask you to read the instructions. I added the politely. But hose-end sprayer, one of the more useful tools. The great thing about using a liquid application rather than granular is it's just going to absorb more quickly into the circulatory system of that plant. All right, let's real briefly talk about diseases. Important thing to remember, most turf grass problems, especially here in northern Colorado, are not caused by diseases. They are caused by what we call cultural or mechanical bad practices. Mowing with a dull blade, nutrient deficiencies, overwatering, underwatering, over-fertilizing, under-fertilizing. However, I'm going to briefly go over 3 common turf grass diseases. Like I said, actual turf grass diseases are pretty unusual here in northern Colorado. But first I'm going to talk about is leaf blight. Leaf blight is a fungal infection. You're usually going to see signs or symptoms of this in early spring. You're going to see large uniform areas of your grass just turning straw colored. Leaves will die back from the tips down to the roots. And this is a fungus mostly caused by bad cultural practices. A liquid fungicide is available, but before I applied any fungicide or insecticide, for that matter, to my turf grass, I would try to change my cultural practices first. And the problem about going straight to a chemical product is, yeah, it may kill the pathogens, but one of the problems is it's going to kill 99% of them, and that 1% you have left are going to create another generation of fungicide or insecticide resistant pathogens. Next common problem I'm going to talk about is necrotic ring spot. What you're going to see is frog-eyed shaped patches in your turf grass. Again, this is a fungus. This one, unlike leaf blight, which lives in the leaves of your grass plants, this lives in the roots. Fungicide is mildly effective for this. This is a problem that, again, can be cured by good cultural practices. Unfortunately, any fungicide that I'm allowed to sell you as a residential grower is going to be pretty ineffective. If you have a bad problem with this, unfortunately, I'm going to have to refer you to a professional applicator, because they're going to have to soak this down 6 to 12 inches in the soil, and the hose-in sprayer just is not going to work for that application. Finally, the insect problem I'm going to talk about is there's a number of mites that affect turf grass in Colorado. Newer strains, especially the new strain of Kentucky Bluegrass that's been developed, seems to be reasonably mite resistant. But again, all of these problems, drought stressed and badly cared for turf is a lot more susceptible to disease and insect problems than well cared for turf is. The way to affect, you're going to see your turf grass just looking poor all over from this. It's going to have jagged margins, it's going to have brown tips, and if you look up close and use a hand lens, the way this has been described is you're going to see walking dust spots. Pick one of them up, crush it. If that little speck of dust turns red, you have mites. Mites often, mites are endemic. They will always be with us. You certainly can't get rid of all of them. I wouldn't spray preventatively, but if you do see signs or symptoms of mites, to a level where you don't want them, you decided to get rid of them, this is a product that's pyrethrin, 38%, applied with a hose-in sprayer. I'm always going to recommend that you start with the least toxic, least serious product I can sell you, and then kind of escalation of force through there. Because, like I said, if we're over-treating our turf grass with chemicals, what we're creating is insecticide and fungicide resistant insects. Again, come see us here at Fossil Creek Nursery. Bring photos. We'd be more than happy to help you diagnose any plant problems you have. Finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about weed control. Best way to deal with weed control is good cultural practices. Ultimately, what we want to do is, before we have to spray toxins on them, is to get our turf grass to outcompete those weeds. Good cultural practices, good mechanical practices, the correct amount of fertilizer will help with that. If you are still having troubles, this is a selective herbicide, meaning it'll only affect broadleaf plants, the weeds in your lawn. Look for a product that's active ingredient is 2,4-D. Read the instructions. Okay, that's just really the basics of turf grass management. Important things to remember: planning is more important than throwing money at the problem, at turf grass problems. Spend the time and money up front before you install a turf grass at your place. Good cultural practices are more important than good chemical practices. And just remember, diseases and insects are usually a sign of bad cultural practices more than an infestation. Well, I hope you got something out of this. I'd love to answer any questions. If not, I'm going to wish you all a happy opening day. All right. Hey, thanks so much for stopping by today. My name's Dan. I really appreciate it that you joined me today.